Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I'm not even going to bother with the whole coming to you live garbage. This is Rantzerker number. Ooh, we're kind of 219. Teachers out Grape the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts. Well, I don't know for sure, but I have seen or heard of this recent data. I was gonna just talk more about politics today. Um, but I don't know. I don't know if this is something you guys are interested in. I think that there are multiple intersections between men's issues and other things like culture and education and politics. But I think that we're going to take a break from that. Although, things aren't really as dire these days now that we have four of the five lions to form Voltron. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, or the four of the five dudes in the Battle of the Planets
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. G-Force.
forming,
Yeah.
yeah, the G-Force. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, the
Yeah,
G-Force. They get
yeah,
into the jet. There's five of them, right? I
yeah,
know
yeah,
there's
yeah,
yeah, I know there's five Voltron pilots. And
yeah.
so we're
No,
just waiting on the fifth, you
yeah, we're
know.
just waiting on K-Bop or whatever his name was.
Oh, the one that made those boom that
Yeah,
didn't
yeah,
talk.
yeah. No, the
Yeah.
Jar Jar Binks of G-Force. Yeah.
I remember that one.
Hmm.
Well, anyway, while we're waiting on that, we're gonna look at this article from the Federalist. It came out last month, but it slipped past us, and it's pretty interesting. All we'll say is so there is this popular idea or narrative out there that the Boy Scouts and the Catholic Church are really predatory when it comes to children. And when they say that, they mean boys, but they don't want to say boys, so they just say children. Um, because it means it's the Boy Scouts and it's the Catholic Church. But as we have been reporting on instances of teachers molesting their children, their students rather, and a lot of people, even on the conservative side, they sort of dismiss it like there's something different about boys in school, that they're less affected, that they want it, the whole South
Yeah.
Park meme.
Oh, yeah,
Nice,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I
um
wish. I wish when I was a kid. I mean, like we even had a whole Van Halen song about this shit.
mm-hmm,
You
mm-hmm.
know.
Was it like Hot for Teacher, right?
Yeah, yeah, got it bad.
Yeah, yeah. um
So bad.
on Karen sounds fine. Thank you. Oh yeah, I should have checked the volume. No, I think we're good. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article, because it seems that the problem of child molestation might be bigger in schools than it is in both the Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts. So we're going to look at this. I'm sharing the screen with you already, and I'm going to read through it. And then when you want to comment, Karen, if you want to say anything now before we get into
Oh,
it.
yeah, no. How much you want to bet this is mostly female teacher driven because everybody gives male teachers, particularly K to 6, the stank eye, and like everybody's watching them like a hawk, K to 6 male teachers. So how much
I'm
you
not
want to?
even sure. I'm not even sure that I think that male teachers have a harder time getting a job because of that
Oh yeah,
stigma
of course they do.
as
Of course
teachers.
they
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's why they one of the things that like male teachers have told me is that, like I mean there was one who taught my kids, both of my older two kids when they were in grade 6, right? But he was a Mormon and he was just like very, 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 very he was very personable and very uh very clean cut. Like he was just like the most clean person on the freaking planet in terms of like morality and shit, right? And so like he stayed in the classroom, but most of the male teachers in K to 6 ended up being principals, right? And it's because they felt uncomfortable in the classroom because parents would look at them funny. and be like, why are you even here? Like, these are little kids, you know?
Yeah.
And
Hey, you ever
so,
see the
yeah.
movie the movie called The Hunt with Mads Mikkelsen? I brought this up before.
Oh,
It
yeah,
came out
yeah,
a
yeah,
few.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, that was awful. You know,
Yeah.
some little girl makes some shit up, right? Because she's mad, right? Like she literally just had a temper tantrum and made something up. And then all the adults around her pressed her for details with leading questions, and then she was like, "Yeah, he touched me there and there and there, just like you suggested he might have." And then it was just all of a sudden, you know, like, and I kissed him, and it's just like, okay, so some little 6-year-old girl has a freaking crush on her kindergarten teacher, right? And he sets a boundary, right? And then that's it. It's
Mm-hmm.
over for him, right? Because all of the adults around this little girl who's mad at him for setting a boundary are all of a sudden like, you touched her, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's
It's
it was
definitely
it
making
was
a
a
statement.
powerful movie,
Yeah.
absolute powerful movie. So
Yeah. Very. All right. Well. Yeah. So let's see what the Federalist has to say regarding this article. And then whenever you want to butt in, go ahead. So, one
all
in
right.
10 K through 12 students has been sexually abused by a teacher. So we start off with a data point. And to be fair, I don't know, like it can be just as difficult to sort of like treat this as an absolute as a feminist statistic. Like I just had a guest on Monday, military, former military. You can't call him a veteran because he was dishonorably discharged after a false accusation. So he
No.
can only be considered former military. And yeah, the reason why, and I think this is relevant because it is along the same lines, and you're just looking in the opposite direction. The reason why this happened was because in the military, they were told that there is a rape culture and that they had to, so therefore, there must be convictions. And so the Obama administration, because that's when it was going on, they said we need to get convictions. And so because there have to be, because we were told this is a problem. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of allegations that go through, and they, even if like a lot of guys see prison time for nothing, but even when they don't, even if even if charges are dropped, even if the police don't investigate, it's enough to destroy their reputation anyway. And so this
Yes.
guy was dishonorably discharged. I mean, the worst thing he did engage in infidelity, which he confessed to. But
Yeah.
there was no sexual assault. There was no
Coercion.
yeah, there was no coercion. There was no force. Nothing. It was all consensual.
Hmm.
But because he was I think in a compromised position because he did something immoral with involving his marriage. It was easier for the military to throw the book at him, at least enough to get him dishonorably discharged. And yeah, it's a mess. So that this happens, and it all happens based on presumptions. The presumption is if you tell the Pentagon that, hey, rape culture is real, 1 in 4 women, in college campuses, the same kind of thing. And then you say you have to get convictions. And it's actually really good also. What he told me was the reason why it happened under the Obama administration was because the Democrats, and he said, look, I don't want to be partisan, but this is just the truth. The Democrats want the female vote. One of the ways you get the female vote is to essentially be a champion for women, and then there's
Yeah.
no easier way to do that than to champion a cause that they're actually not that in danger of by saying, oh yeah, rape culture, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's the stuff that we're stuck having to look at instead of the stuff like what's in this article.
Yeah.
So, yeah, take the statistic with a grain of salt. 1 in 10, maybe, I don't know. So the rate of sexual misconduct in public schools far exceeds the high-profile abuse scandals that rocked the Roman Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts of America. So let's get into that a little bit. I got a super chat from somebody. Hold on a second. So I got a super chat from Blade Kaiser. He gives us $5 and says, "You should rest 2 weeks after anal." Karen Strawn, 2024.
Oh,
I don't know if have you been quoted as saying this thus.
No, I don't hold by that policy either. So, I mean, it's a good idea to not overdo it, but
Okay. Is there still echo? Are you guys still getting echo? Oh, you know what? It's me. That's why. Okay. I got it. I got it. Now, hold on a second. I gotta turn my microphone down. Okay. So the article. All right. Every day, millions of parents put their children under the care of public school teachers, administrators, and support staff. Their trust, however, is frequently broken by predators in authority in what appears to be the largest ongoing sexual abuse scandal in our nation's history. Given the roughly 50 million students in U.S. K through 12 schools each year, the number of students who have been victims of sexual misconduct by school employees is probably in the millions each decade, according to multiple studies. Such numbers would far exceed the high-profile abuse scandals that rocked the Roman Catholic Church and the Boy Scouts of America. What were you gonna want to say something about that?
No. Sorry, just.
Oh, okay. Just listening. All right. It's all good. For a variety of reasons, ranging from embarrassment to eagerness to avoid liability, elected or appointed officials, along with unions or lobbying groups, so like school teachers unions and stuff, representing school employees, have fought to keep the truth hidden from the public. In any given year, this is a quote, in any given year, they have failed to report thousands of these situations, and instead they've papered them over and acted like it's not an issue. Former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos told Real Clear Investigations. Stunned by a 2018 Chicago Tribune investigation that found 523 incident reports of sexual misconduct by employees of the city schools during the past decade, DeVos, during the Trump administration, launched the process of including specific questions about such cases in the department's civil rights data collection, a process it undertakes every 2 years. Previously, the Office of Civil Rights asked only general questions about sexual misconduct incidents without a breakdown of alleged perpetrators.
Oh, so we see this isn't about students raping students. This is maybe more about Hugo Schweitzer.
Hugo Schweitzer?
You don't remember Hugo Schweitzer?
I know the name. I can't remember specifically.
Yeah, no, he was I forget what university, and it was a college in California. He was a women's studies professor at, and he didn't have any credentials to teach women's studies, and he had a habit of sleeping with his female students. And you remember he wrote an article, like a huge outpouring of like his baggage, right? Just airing his dirty laundry. He wrote an article about how he'd like tried to commit murder suicide, like because he and his ex-girlfriend were addicted to drugs, and she came over one day and they did a bunch of drugs and she passed out, and then he like turned on the freaking gas stove and tried to kill them both, and the neighbors smelled the gas and came and and kept it from happening. And he just is massive confessional, and I mean, even feminists had to disown him. And then he ended up having like some kind of horrific breakdown, psychotic breakdown, and ended up in a mental institution where they happened to give him his phone, his cell phone, and then he went on Twitter and confessed to everything, that he was like a fraud, and he didn't even really care about women, and he doesn't care about feminism, and he he basically, it was a good job, and he could he could pretend to care about women while banging co-eds and and all of this other stuff, right? And he just I guess he was they gave him some benzodiazepam or something to take the edge off his withdrawal symptoms from the freaking heroin or coke or whatever it was. And he just went on this big freaking Twitter thread and just unloaded a whole bunch of, it was kind of like a Charles Clymer. You remember Charles Clymer?
Yeah, I remember that name too, but I can't remember the specifics of
Charles now Charlotte.
Yes, right. We talked about that not that long ago.
Yeah.
And, well, you know what? For the audience, give them a little refresher.
Well, Charles Clymer was the guy who basically he wrote a whole statistically valid article. It was a statistical analysis of various likelihoods of events happening to you, and he determined that as a man, you're more likely to be killed by an asteroid than to be falsely accused of rape. And his math was feminist math. That's the only way I can describe it. And
math.
Yeah, no, he described. He compared the based on 100 sexual encounters a year on average over the course of 50 years, right? The per sexual encounter incidence, taking only the 2% false rape claim as the only figure. There's a per sexual encounter incident that's the equivalent of being killed by an asteroid, and it's like your lifetime risk of being killed by an asteroid. And I'm like, okay, you do realize virgins get falsely accused of sexual assault and rape, right? Like they've never had a sexual encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then you're going to assume 100 sexual encounters per year for 50 straight years, right? And then you're going to compare the per incidence, right? Per sexual incident incidence against the lifetime risk of being killed by an asteroid, and then say, see, man, you don't have nothing to worry about. And anyway, he got booted out because he started crossing all kinds of boundaries too. I mean, it's like, it's really, it's kind of like Alison and I have discussed this before, right? Like, well, if you were a rapey guy, right, and you wanted to sexually assault and sexually harass women, right, and you got off on that, wouldn't you want to surround yourself with a bunch of women who talk about sexual harassment and sexual assault all the time, so you can that, and then on top of that, they don't just talk about that, they talk about how difficult it is to report it. 99% of sexual assaults don't even get reported. Oh, well, let's see whether you're one of that 99%.
That's a good point. And then he realized that he was born in the wrong body.
Yes, then he realized that he was really a woman, and he was actually on a.
Was he being persecuted legally before he had this revelation?
I don't. Well, no, he was canceled by the feminist movement.
I see. And then he became Stunning and Brave.
Became Stunning and Brave, and then he was on the Women for Kamala Zoom call.
God! Yeah, I remember. Yeah, no. That's when we. That's right. See, that's how easy it is, guys. If you really want to use patriarchy to your advantage, become a woman.
Become a woman. God.
All right, so I wanted to look at the they have a link in the article that takes you to a report that I want to look at. So I'm going to share this here, and this is Channel 5 Chicago, so my hometown. Hundreds of Chicago public school students were sexually abused in the last decade, report finds. So let's see. The Tribune analyzed 523 Chicago police reports from 2008 through 2017 of children being sexually assaulted or abused inside public schools across the city, and reviewed several other elements, including criminal charges and prosecutions, lawsuits filed by victims, CPS investigative reports, and more. In all, the publication found 72 school employees. So this is like faculty and teachers and staff and
janitors
stuff.
and
Janitors and coaches.
Yeah.
Right. Alleged to have violated students, including teachers, counselors, coaches, security guards, and more. The assaults and abuse took place at schools across the entire city, with a searchable database to find incidents reported at specific schools. So let me see here. I just want to see if there's anything else of interest. CTO. CPS is a Chicago Public School. It's a publicly funded organization. CEO. Weird, they have a CEO. Janice Jackson said in a statement that the district has a plan of action to improve protections for students, saying, quote, "I will not be satisfied until I am confident that the district is doing everything possible to ensure that our hiring practices, background checks, training, and handling of sexual assault and misconduct allegations are the best policies and practices to protect our students, period." Jackson said the district planned to bring an independent evaluator to conduct a top-to-bottom review of policies. The Schiff Hardin law firm and former Illinois Executive Inspector General Maggie Hickey were tapped to conduct the review, according to the Tribune, which reported the district had approved a $500,000 contract and that the findings of that review will be made public. Jackson told the paper, "Nothing is more important to Chicago Public Schools than student safety, particularly with the adults who are supposed to serve them, and we are taking significant actions to ensure our students have the safest possible learning environments." And this was, let's see how old this is, 2018. So we haven't really heard anything yet. And it seems to me that this, so you said, let me just switch this back. You said that this guy who became a professor had no credentials. How did he get the job? Was it because he knew people? I know maybe you don't know, but yeah, I mean, I wonder how much of this is, if you know the right people, they can just get you the job. Like, I want to teach gender studies. Okay, you're hired, because we have
he had like, I mean, I'm sure he had like a university degree, but he didn't have a PhD in like gender studies or anything like that. Or even, I don't even think he had one in history or anything. Right? He was just some rando who, I guess
I don't think it's hard to fake it. I think I could get a doctorate in gender studies because just from doing this show.
Well, honestly, like, you know, like my husband was trying to convince me to go and apply to somebody like maybe Robert King or you know, at the University of Cork in Ireland, or, you know, someone like that, and just apply to see if I could get into a PhD program for this kind of stuff. And he's like, you could do it. Like, you could absolutely do it. But I'm just like, not interested in that kind of thing. I'd rather just get out there and talk. So.
Yeah, fair enough. And do you know anything about, I don't know if you looked into it, but like, according to this report from the Federalist, this article, Betsy DeVos, who was the education secretary during the 2016 period, the Trump was president.
Trump years, yeah.
Yeah, during the Trump years, said that she was launching a process of including specific questions about cases in schools. So she wanted to make the investigation a little bit more robust when there were allegations, or what do you think?
This isn't about the investigations. This is about reporting, right? Reporting to the federal government, right?
Mm-hmm.
So okay, Kevin, shut up. When a law enforcement agency reports to the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Service, right? A system, they include a bunch of things, you know, like what was the actual nature of the sexual assault, right? Was it digital penetration? Was it penile penetration? Was it, oral penetration? Was it, like what actually happened, right? And then what were the surrounding circumstances? Was it forcible? Was it verbal coercion? Was it incapacitation through intoxication? Like how did that happen? And then they also look at what's the sex of the perpetrator, the perpetrator characteristics, right? Okay, and that's what you have being reported to the FBI, including sex, age, race, anything that you know about the perpetrator. They will report that to the Uniform Crime Reporting System, right? Whereas before Betsy DeVos came in, it was just basically you had to report that there was a sexual assault. Not just K to 12, but K to all the way through higher
University.
education.
Yeah.
You had to report if there was a sexual assault reported to the school, right? But you didn't have to really fill any of those details in, including whether it was a teacher or us. I mean, she was brought on to like completely revamp the entire sexual assault system in the Department of Education because of the lack of due process for male students accused of sexual assault, right? And she actually changed the rules back to something somewhat sane, while still respecting the experiences of victims. And but she reestablished due process and on college campuses and stuff, and she put in place this more detailed reporting system because you basically, I forget, it's a law that's named after someone, but it's basically by law, if there's a sexual assault complaint that's made to any school in the United States, they have to report it to the Department of Education, right? And she's just basically said, well, you can't just get away with saying, yeah, we had a complaint. You have to actually, fill in some of the details.
Yeah. So would you say that during the Trump years, what Betsy DeVos's function was supposed to be, would you say that was on the right track? Even though I think once Biden took office, they reversed everything.
They reversed everything. Yeah, no, I think Betsy DeVos, she was actually really balanced. Everything that I saw her do was like designed to improve tracking of incidents, right? Sort of improve the tracking system of what's going on where and how often, right? While affording due process rights and adversarial process rights to both the accused and the accusers. So, I mean, she really did strike a fine balance between, no one who's accusing someone of something that, is kind of makes you feel ashamed or embarrassed or whatever, wants to sit there and face them and be questioned by them and, in front of everybody and all of that stuff, right? I mean, it's a very difficult thing and it's necessary, but it's extremely difficult if you've actually been through that. And if you haven't, it's super easy, right? If you're just doing it to stick it to some guy you hate, right? It's super easy to get on the stand and and spill your guts, spill whatever fake, bile you have. But if you've actually been through something like that, it's a little bit more difficult to do it right to their face. And so, I mean, like she really did kind of strike a balance between the rights of the accuser and the rights of the accused. And you got to know that she made some progress because the moment Biden Harris got in, right, they rolled all of it back, right? They just deleted everything.
Yeah, it was like she didn't do anything. They just set it back to square one.
Yeah.
Do you think that then? Because what I'm wondering is why would they do that? It would seem to be a fair thing to leave in place, and I don't think that it makes sense that it's simply because the Orange Man hired her. I think it's. I think that maybe could it be? I don't know. Teachers unions that are concerned. Could it be something else?
No. I actually do think that it was a knee-jerk Orange Man bad. Do the opposite, right? Do the opposite of the Orange Man. They did that with so many of his policies, including very sensible ones,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just as a knee-jerk response. Well, this has Trump's name on it. Get rid of it, right? And like I don't think they even looked at any of it. They were just like, put the Obama thing back in place, right? And
Yeah, well, yeah, it was probably Obama that told them to do it. To be honest, now that you
no,
mention it,
it
it
was
was
Obama. It was under Obama that dear colleague letter came down, right?
yeah, yeah.
Where it was like, yeah, no, you have to, if you don't want to lose your federal funding, you're going to have to adjudicate sexual assaults on a 50.01 balance of probabilities, right? And
Hmm.
instead of an 80% clear and convincing burden of proof, right? Um, and and he's not allowed to have a lawyer, and he's not allowed to have like an advocate, and anything, but yet anything that he says in the tribunal hearing at the university can and will be used against him in a freaking criminal court. Like, what the fuck is that, right? So yeah, no, it was insane what Obama pushed through, with the help of Ruslan Ali, um, his the I think she was the assistant director of the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights under Obama. So
Mm.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just trying to get like a feel for like the timeline, the landscape, and what's changed because apparently these extra, like I guess this extra layer of questioning or detail that DeVos was asking for was initially the Biden administration, when they came in power, sought to remove those questions, saying that it wanted to avoid data duplication.
Oh yeah, no. They wanted to avoid catching freaking Charles Clymer in the girls' bathroom sexually assaulting her classmates. I'm gonna turn off my camera for a second. Give me a second.
Okay, no problem. And I'll just keep reading in the meantime. So the Biden administration initially sought to remove those questions, saying it wanted to avoid data duplication, but it backtracked after fierce criticism. It was doing so as a sop to teachers' unions. Consequently,
Yeah, no, that could be the case too, right? But I do actually think that it's not so much a matter of teachers' unions. I think it's probably a trans issue thing.
that's probably right too. Consequently, the question will be included on future questionnaires, but as of today, the Department of Education has no data, a spokesman told RCI. So they have no data, Department of Education. These days, from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon, even a cursory review of local news reporting brings disquieting revelations of teachers accused of or arrested for alleged sexual relations with a student. And if you guys watch the news show, I've taken a break from reporting on those because it's a little black pilling to here a teacher raped her student, a teacher raped her student, and they don't see
Another
jail
one.
time, or they just go do community service, or they pay a fine, or they just relocate and then they start teaching someplace else. Like there's a lot of this that happens, and you just want to. But if you want to watch the news show. I might start looking for those cases again in light of this new information because, like, when this was going on in the Catholic Church, it was a gigantic scandal. Everyone knew about it.
Because it was men doing it, Brian.
Yes,
It was
I know.
men doing it.
Right.
And it was super gay.
And the Boy Scouts too. And I mean, like, and the scale, this scale of what's happening here is way more than what happened to the Catholic Church or the Boy Scouts. So
Well,
why doesn't it
because-
have the same stigma? Obviously, it's because it's women who are the offenders. And it's education. Like, these people are very protective of public education because it is their tool of the indoctrination.
Yeah.
Like that. And the thing is too, is that they're only talking about the sexual assaults that happen in school, but it doesn't really include the grooming and the queering and transing of children,
No.
by teaching them that, like, that's not included. So, like, it's worse than that. I mean,
Yeah.
It's not just public education. I know James Lindsay, he did a great video about how this ideology, queer theory, and like what's the I can't remember his name. Paolo Fieri, you know who that is? He was like a Marxist professor from South America. He basically he's called like one of the fathers of queer theory, along with Kinsey and John Money. Anyway, he had this whole thing that was like a new way of teaching children that is about essentially, trying to indoctrinate them into queer studies. And when I say queer, and I shouldn't have to say this again, but some people think I mean gay. It doesn't mean gay. Queer means an identity without an essence. It is essentially going against anything that is considered the norm or the hegemony, right? So
and gay is normal now. I'm sorry, but gay and lesbian is normal now, right?
Yeah, it is.
So we're just gonna have to keep pushing that fucking envelope all the way off a cliff, right? If we're gonna keep finding queerness everywhere. Yeah, now it's like freaking girls who wear cat tails and cat ears to school and only talk in meows, right? Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no, we're not done yet. It's going to get weirder.
Oh, God.
So anyway, I just wanted to make a mention of that this is only talking about sexual assault. I think schools, like, if you guys have kids, man, and also private schools and charter schools, they're not much better. Because it's not about where the money comes from. It's about the ideas that are spread. And we're talking about at least 2 generations of teachers who have learned in this same system that think it is, in fact, the best way forward. And so they just bring that into their own curriculum, and they teach those students, and some of those students will become teachers, and they will carry that forward. So, just homeschool your kids. Is what I'm saying.
No, if my kids were little right now, I'd homeschool them. 100%. Right?
Oh,
like, I
go
wouldn't
ahead.
even put them in a private school.
No, I wouldn't do that. The one, I guess there are people creating like online only university. I know Jordan Peterson is working on one, but I don't think he's the only one. I think a lot of people are doing like online universities independent of schools. They may not be great in terms of socialization because you're online, but at least in terms of not getting your kid turned into like a gay race communist, I think it's pretty good.
Oh yeah, no, but even when I was a kid, there was like correspondence school.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I took grade 11 social studies. I repeated it by correspondence because my social studies teacher was like a raging freaking communist, and I kept on pointing out the flaws in his reasoning in front of the class, and so he docked me marks for attitude. And
I couldn't imagine why.
Yeah. So then I took it by correspondence, and I think I got like 98% in the course overall, and showed it to my disciplinarian vice principal. God, I forget what his name was, Spanky or something. But I showed my report card to him, and I was like, that teacher, he just had I told you, he just had a thing against me. Sadaway, Mr. Sadaway.
Mr. Sadaway.
Yeah. I was always sad when he was away. Not
Not really.
Not really.
Okay, well let's look at the rest of this article. They name a few other examples, but I just wanted to point out before I read into them that we cover multiple cases of women. It's mostly women, and well, basically in every case that we've covered. But because the majority of teachers are women, that's kind of just how it's going to shake out. But in California, multiple students filed a lawsuit against a male music teacher who had taught at 3 different schools in the San Jose area. The teacher is already serving prison time for previous convictions in sexual misconduct cases with students. Why does he keep getting work? In New Jersey, a female middle school teacher was arrested for an alleged ongoing sexual relationship with a student. So that was a female teacher. In Texas, a male teacher was arrested for allegedly having a sexual affair with a 12-year-old student. In Illinois, a female substitute teacher faces charges of grooming and predatory criminal sexual assault for an alleged relationship with a 6th grader. In Washington, the arrest of a male high school teacher hit on charges of sexual misconduct with a minor represented a repeat nightmare for a school district that previously had a psychologist convicted on the same charges. And just last weekend, a 36-year-old New Jersey teacher, a woman, was arrested on multiple assault charges involving a sexual relationship with a teenage student. These stories hold a lurid appeal to some. Sensational accounts of seductions of students by teachers, typically by high school female teachers, are tabloid catnip. This is true. And that's what it is. Like, it's a lot of like younger, they're either teachers or they're like teachers' aides in high schools.
Well, they're not Randy Weingartens.
No,
they're not. No, they're attractive young female teachers that male students would have a crush on.
Yeah. So anyway, the topic has provided material for stand-up comics, Hollywood writers, and pop tunes that didn't begin or end with Van Halen's 1984 hit Hot for Teacher. But experts who track the problem don't take the problem lightly, pointing to research from Hofstra University that found roughly 1 in 10 students in K-12 schools have suffered some form of sexual misconduct by an educator. Terry Miller, head of the advocacy group Sesame, which stands for Stop Educator Sexual Abuse, Misconduct, and Exploitation, said the number of victims is staggering. The rate of educator sexual misconduct is 10 times higher in 1 year's time than in 5 decades of abuse by clergy. Let me read that again. The rate of educator sexual misconduct is 10 times higher in 1 year's time than in 50 years of abuse by clergy. 10 times higher in 1 year.
Yeah, well, is she talking about the rate or the incidence? Because
the rate, she says the rate.
Well, but people use that interchangeably a lot.
I don't know, yeah.
You know, like, okay, 10 times higher in 1 year. Well, how many more kids are in school than are in the Catholic Church and in a position to be abused at Sunday school or, as an altar boy, right? So, you're kind of looking at, this could just, the rates may be the same, but I mean, she could be using, there's a rate of speed, which is like 100 kilometers an hour. There's also a rate of acceleration, right? And then you compare rates and, like it's a lot of people don't really use the terminology correctly. So she could be talking about just like raw numbers of incidents.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to be careful of. I'm not going to make a case in defense of the Catholic Church, but I don't even know if that's why I said in the beginning at the outset, like, I don't know if I can trust these statistics because I don't trust statistics at all that much these days because of how, they get used, but that still sounds like a lot. And I wonder if it includes Catholic school, like when they talk about abuse by clergy, because aren't Catholic, I've never been to a Catholic school, but are Catholic schools? No,
teachers at Catholic schools they aren't clergy, right? Like I've been to, my cousins went to Catholic school. My husband went to a Catholic school for a while. The teachers are just everyday teachers.
They're just teachers.
Don't even necessarily have to be Catholic, right? But you do have a religion class, right? That is a mandatory, and that's generally taught by somebody who's like Catholic clergy, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, no, the math teacher isn't necessarily a priest, right? Like it's not just taught by priests and nuns, at least not
Right.
anymore.
I just
So
had this image Catholic schools being staffed by nuns with rulers, old
well,
grumpy nuns with
maybe
big rulers.
maybe back in the day, but like it's those generally, the reason for Catholic schools, the reason for religious schools was generally because public schools were um eh, weren't available, right? Like Catholic school was public school, right? Because all the other schools were
Oh
private
yeah,
schools because we
they,
didn't have a public school system, right?
right.
It was paid for by the taxpayer. So you either sent your kid to private school and paid yourself, or your kids went to Catholic school, which was paid for by the church and was primarily staffed by volunteers from the church, right? So like that was the origins of that, but that's not what it is today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So I again, the statistics sound shocking, but it might be a little bit, it might not be what it sounds like. So the rate of, I'll just read it one more time. The rate of educator sexual misconduct is 10 times higher in 1 year's time than in 5 decades of abuse by clergy, Miller said, noting that in 2021, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops reported it had received nearly 4,300 sexual abuse allegations. Another striking contrast is we are not mandated to send our children to church. We are mandated to send them to school.
yeah,
I mean, that's true. That's another reason why there's more kids in school, too, because
yeah,
they have to
yeah.
go. The extent of the problem may shock many Americans. The topic has long been shrouded by a curtain held by various actors in the drama. Schools reluctant to go public with embarrassing and possibly criminal activity, unions fighting for members' privacy. So the unions are protecting the accused, I can
Oh
only
yeah,
assume, and
oh yeah.
sometimes state laws that protect it, and a government reluctant to ask hard questions that would gather reliable data. So it's like a combination of things, right? So you got, the schools don't want to talk about it because it's going to ruin their name. This is the issue at colleges. This is why they do everything in these sort of kangaroo courts,
Yeah.
when allegations come out on universities, because they don't want to give the university a bad name. They're worried about, whether or not they're not going to get new members or applicants. Schools reluctant to go public with him. Yeah, like I read that. Unions fighting for members' privacy. I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess it makes sense that you want to do that, but what is the union? How do they benefit from that? Are they just saying, "Oh, this is what we do," or
No, okay. Let me give you a okay. So there was this woman in Nova Scotia. She was um, a continuing care nurse, right? Like in nursing home, right?
Mhm.
I forget what her Wagert or something like that. Um, but I forget what her name is. Honestly, there's just so many fucking names in my brain right now. But anyway, she killed a bunch of patients. She was addicted to opioids, right, which she was stealing from the medicine cabinet, and several patients died on her watch. She was a night nurse, and several patients died on her watch because she either didn't give them medication or didn't wasn't she was too stoned to react to an alarm, or she overdosed them, right? And they figured, oh, it was an accidental overdose because she was addicted, and so she was fired, and then her union came to her defense, right? You can't leave this woman, she's going to be destitute, right? Because it says on her employment record that she was fired, right? And so we're willing to negotiate and we're willing to not sue you, okay, if you just put that she was that she left of her own volition because she was pursuing new career opportunities on her termination slip. And so they did, and then she went on and killed like 6 more people and attempted to kill 8 others. These are her patients, the most vulnerable people, and it's like, it's what the union does, right? Like they protect their members no matter what, right? They try and they're like lawyers. And, like, okay, you might know that, your client, as a lawyer, your client killed 6 people in cold blood. And your job is to, without lying, right? And without suborning perjury, okay? Because those are the 2 things that you're not allowed to do, right? To get him the best deal possible, right? Because everybody deserves a defense, right? And unions take that to a whole nother level. And so, the union threatened to sue. So the nursing home basically changed her employment termination record, and she got another job at another nursing home and killed more people.
Of course, the union covered for her, and so and what does the union get out of that? How do they benefit?
Well, they benefit with union dues, and if they didn't protect their members as vigorously as possible, then, what's the point of having a union?
Right. So they're doing it to maintain their own relevancy.
And
More or
their
less.
own power,
Justify themselves and also, continue to have to stay as powerful as they are.
Well, and as with full pockets, right? So, I mean, and like everything, it can go overboard, in which case the company will do restructuring and the union will go bye-bye and everybody will suffer, right? All of the good employees will suffer along with the shitty ones that were protected unjustifiably by the union. But, it's just one of those weird things about unions. I mean, my husband's in a union right now, and he describes it as very weird. Like, they protect people who do, like, they preserve the employment of people who do nothing, and not only just people who do nothing, but people who are counterproductive, who actually put obstacles in the way of other people actually getting anything done, right? And they put up with that, they tolerate that, because try to fire anyone, just try. Like, you can say, go sit in the corner and play Bomberman all day and stay out of everybody's way and we'll keep paying you, right? But people don't take kindly to that, and they'll make a complaint even if you tell them that. Just sit on your ass all day and do nothing and we'll pay you for the next 12 years until retirement. And they won't tolerate that, because then it's like, well, are you saying that I'm useless? Well, yeah, you are. You're worse than useless. Right?
Yeah, you're making everybody's life harder in the union.
You're worse than a potted plant.
Yeah.
You're a poisonous plant.
You're like poison oak.
Yeah.
Okay, so the unions are covering, again, probably for the reasons you described, but they're claiming it's for members' privacy, and sometimes state laws that protect it. And the government is reluctant to ask hard questions that would gather reliable data, because Orange Man bad. But the cases and tactics often used to cover them up have become common enough to earn an ugly nickname called passing the trash. Department of Education does not and never has tracked sexual misconduct committed by adults against students, says Billy Joe Grant, a professor at California's Poly State University, who is one of the nation's top researchers on the topic. So the Department of Education doesn't track sexual misconduct committed by adults against students.
Well, committed by staff.
Right. Yeah, well,
Like,
that's what they mean. I guess if it was random homeless guy in the back of the school, they'd probably like just there'd be a file. But
well, no, if it was random homeless guy in back of the school, you wouldn't expect them to track that,
right,
right? But if it's like, so there, the DOE is tracking student on student sexual assault. That's it, right? And
and even then, it's probably just when it's a male offender and a female victim.
well, because male victims don't tend to report. So I'm pretty sure they do track male victims and female offenders, but in most cases, male victims don't tend to report that. Like, I just remember this one case where there was like two students had drunk sex, and both were pretty sure the other would regret it. And the guy got to the dean's office faster in the morning than the girl did, and he reported it.
Yeah.
And then she was the defendant, and she was on the wrong side of the accusation. And they wrote a big article. It was like such a sob story about, how dare this happen to her. I swear to God, if you pee on that wall, I washed a wall today. And he's like,
this is mine.
Virgin territory. I need to mark this. So.
All right. Yeah. So DOE has never aggressively worked to stop teachers' unions and administrators from passing the trash, which is what we just called the nickname for what that is, where no one wants to confront this. She told RCI, DOE does not hold accountable the many enablers who have created a pool of mobile molesters in our schools nationwide. Your question should include why. Why? Oh, I have a sound for that. Why? You know the preacher. Wait, where is it? I do have it, but I don't know where it is. Maybe it's under Rage. I think it's in my Rage folder. I have a Rage folder for when we get upset. Yeah, right. There it goes.
Why?
Grant and Miller attended a Department of Education conference on the topic in D.C. in October 2019, and it was out of that meeting that its Office for Civil Rights decided to ask more specific question in its civil rights data collections, according to Miller. And while the government may be groping toward more clarity, as a DOE official acknowledged having no data the department would make public, he insisted the matter is viewed with concern. So even though this DOE official said, we don't have any data, but we're totally concerned. No, he insisted the matter is
acknowledged having no data, quote.
Yeah.
The department would make public.
Yeah, the department would make public, right. Important detail.
They have the data, they're just not going to disclose it.
Right. So let's keep going, but this is just, it's getting a little bit darker as I go along. So in 2004, then Hofstra professor Carol Shakeshaft
why didn't she just change her name to Dick Slapper or Dick Swinger?
Dolphin Flogger.
No, like the shaft, and she's shaking her shaft.
Shake Shaft. That's her name. Okay, in 2000, and in regards to this story, it's I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
God has a sense of humor. God has a sense of humor.
and all we need is a Coburn, which is spelled Cockburn.
All right. In 2004, then Hofstra professor Carol Shakeshaft did a report for the DOE that assessed the data available on the topic. From a handful of regional studies and media reports, Shakeshaft's report found some broad parameters of the problem. For example, while stories involving female teachers may be more titillating and gain more media attention, about 2/3 of the predators in school are male. While no region seems to be immune from the problem, about half of the reported incidents occurred in southern states, Shake Shaft's report found. Most of the victims are female, 56%, and the majority of incidents involve high schools, 62%.
Oh, well, that's a relief.
So about 2/3 of the predators are male.
Yeah,
so
but
that,
at least
go
we're
ahead.
talking kids 15 and older. Right. I mean, it's
Yeah.
still not great, but
Well, only 62%. So
yeah,
there's actually a significant that are not in high
Mhm.
school, like 40-something%, right?
Yeah. No, 38%.
Yeah, 38. Yeah.
But it's like, but you no, it's like, okay, 2/3 of the predators in schools are male. I don't trust this number. And the reason I don't trust this number is because male victims underreport compared to female ones. And people don't believe them when they say that they've been victimized. And often they don't even think they've been victimized. Remember, what's his name? Was it Chris Brown? Right? Bragging about how he lost his virginity at 8 years old.
The Chris Brown, the celebrity?
Chris Brown, was it
the guy
Chris
who
Brown?
the guy who beat up Rihanna?
Yeah, it was him or someone similar to him, someone kind of similarly situated. Might have been Jay-Z.
Actually, there's a lot of there are a number of celebrity black men who have stories of sexual experiences that they treat as a boast, but they were like really young when they had them.
8, 10, 12.
Like 8, 10, 12. And a lot of times it's with like an aunt. So it's not just rape, it's incest.
Yeah, no, and it's not, and it's with somebody who's substantially older. I mean, like I had my first sexual or kind of makeout session, right? When I think I was 11, right? But it was with an 11-year-old boy, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't with an adult, or an 18-year-old. So, it's or a 17-year-old. It wasn't with somebody who was like seriously older than me.
Right. Somebody in the chat said that Joe Rogan said that he lost his virginity at 13 to a woman who was 30. So, but if you asked him if he was raped, he would say no. And in fact, he would think you were like,
being ridiculous.
Yeah, being ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if we don't think it's if he was a girl and it was a man, like there'd
be no question. There would be no question that was exploitation, that was at least an adult taking advantage of someone who was vulnerable, right? And so I think I don't trust these numbers because of that skew in our thinking in terms of what happens when a 30-year-old woman seduces a 13-year-old or an 11-year-old male, right? Well, that's just a fling, it's seduction, it's hot for teacher, it's whatever. And the male internalizes that message, right? And so he's not going to complain about it as like a wrong done to him. He's going to think he's been blessed, right? Like the gods and the angels came down and freaking blessed him with this hot 30-year-old teacher and this sexual experience. And it's like, yeah, but you were too young to actually consent to that. And that's what the law says. And I mean, you even look at that woman who accused Justin Bieber of fathering her kid.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then once it was brought to her attention that like the alleged sexual encounter that you're describing occurred before he was 18 years old in California, and that's the age of consent in California, and you were an adult at the time. And so that statutory rape, she was just like, oh, yeah, no, it's not his kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, I don't buy these numbers either. I don't know what they are, but I think that's why this thing from the beginning, I was like, I'm not sure how I'm gonna how I'm gonna feel about what data they put forward. And I still feel like there's a little bit of let's make this about the women so people take this seriously.
The
Or
women
the
and the girls,
women
yeah.
and the girls, right? So it's like, well,
Yeah,
I
and
don't think it's necessary.
if it's a
Yeah,
boy, you know, like, ooh, 2/3 of the perpetrators are male.
yeah,
So
yeah, and
they're actually being victimized and not just treated to, like, you know, something special.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I struggle with this because I've done some substitute teaching. I know this is anecdotal. I don't think it's necessary to make this case. But when I worked in doing subbing here in Virginia, I did it for about a year, and every school I was at, I was like the only male teacher, and
Yeah.
I was a sub. And all the women were like, oh, it's so good to have a man around, like that's how they were. So I mean, and I'm not saying that that kind of stuff happens here, although statistically it's likely on some level somewhere. But it seems to me that if there is an industry that is overwhelmingly majority female and there are incidents of sexual assault in that industry, to put it on the few men that actually are there, even though I'm sure that there are men that are doing it, I'm not denying that at all. It seems like you're really trying to, create a framework that we look at this through. And I don't think it's going to give you the results you want, because the only way we're going to change it is if we hold women as accountable, regardless of the context, as we do men. And we have to look at the possibility that it's, that women are a part of this. But what were you going to say?
Sure, yeah, no, but at the same time, when you look at it, it's about getting people to actually care, and we all know it's not just a zero-sum game. In Alison's words, it's a negative-sum game, right? And so it's like, if we're going to get people to care, it really has to be kind of a male perpetrator, female victim paradigm to get anybody to even care to look at it and investigate it. And I mean, that's probably the biggest indictment of our society, right there.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure Aaron Pitsy would like to have some words. All right, I got a Rumble rant from NovaFan21. He says, Joe Rogan, you got laid, walk it off. All right, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and then I remember his comments on, like, men's rights activists, well, they want to draw attention to the rape of men. Well, it's men doing it. Like, so how are they doing anything? And it's like, okay, well, number one, even if it was only men raping men, which it isn't, but even if it was, right, that doesn't mean that justice should be denied to the victims. It doesn't mean that they're not victims, right? And it doesn't mean that men's rights activists should avoid the topic because it makes men look bad, because it's mostly men who are raping men, or it's all men who are raping men, because I guess he buys into the you can only rape with a penis kind of thing. Like, no, like, just because something's inconvenient for the, I guess, the PR, right? The public relations aspect of men's rights advocacy doesn't mean you drop it as a topic. It doesn't mean you drop it as an issue, because it is an issue, right? Like, I'm sorry, but the sexual abuse of boys in the Catholic Church was an issue for men and boys. And it is an issue for men and boys, right? And it is, and it falls under the rubric of advocacy for men and boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the victims are boys. And as far as I'm concerned, it's likely that the perpetrators are also victims of
Yes.
abuse when they were kids, right? So, and the Catholic Church, there's a reason why this is so concentrated in the Catholic Church, and that's because of the vow of celibacy and the fact that they actively recruited gay men into the clergy because it was a
It
way
was
of
their way of
off,
preventing
off
them from.
yeah, from sinning. It was like,
Mhm.
okay, so you can be a priest that and take a vow of celibacy, and you will be prevented from sinning, and because it's you love the sinner but you hate the sin, and so by actively recruiting them into the clergy, they uh they were preventing the sin and loving the sinner, and well, it didn't work out that great.
Well, it didn't always work out. I'm sure that even when it did happen, it wasn't. I doubt it was a majority, but I don't know. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, to your point about this is another thing that I think a lot of these people who give a pass to teachers raping their students, and I'm just going to call it raping, their male students in particular, but any students, is that they treat it as it's titillating, it's trivial, it's funny, it's cool, whatever. But the
it's a
thing is
boast.
that it well, yeah, but it is also a root problem in the people who go on to become predatory later. Is that
Yeah,
often they have experiences in their own young life. So like, if you want to, it's just like Erin Pitsey said. That's why I mentioned her. If you want to end the cycle of abuse, if you want to end the cycle of rape, and I'm not saying it'll ever be completely wiped out because that's not possible. We live on Earth, right? But if you want to like really cut back, you have to address abuse of boys with the same energy, that bring that same energy to that as you do for girls, regardless of like treating it as a nothing burger because boys they wanted it or they liked it. Because if you had said that about a girl, you'd probably like be canceled, wouldn't have a job or whatever. But you're also doing that those boys a favor, because even if they think that's what they wanted, it may have a detrimental effect on how they view sex and relationships when they become adults, and
yeah,
that could become a problem. Because like they're like, I mean, like I said, maybe you'll turn out okay, but I don't think that it's worth treating so cavalier to do that.
agreed.
So, all right. But anyway, back to this. So, yeah, they found most of the victims are female, and the majority of incidents involve high schools. The problem is not confined to public schools, although the public school student population dwarfs that of private and parochial schools. Incidents of sexual misconduct at Tony schools like New York's Horace Mann or at St. George's in Rhode Island are about two of the most publicized examples of the problem. Protecting kids in school from inappropriate or criminal sexual activity involving employees and students would seem a surefire winner, but instead, DeVos and her team found it was a political football. Union contracts, and in many cases, state law, protects the privacy of employees. What that meant, DeVos explained, is that even if credible allegations of sexual misconduct were leveled against an employee, unless authorities were called in or an arrest was made, the alleged perpetrator was often free to leave one school and go work in another.
Yep.
The definitions of what constitutes sexual misconduct could be broadly construed, and the proliferation of social media has not only loosened the boundaries of contact between school employees and students, but provided more opportunities for wrongdoers. Still, for the most severe conduct, the Trump administration finally introduced on the 2020-2021 school year questionnaire specific questions regarding a school staff member and rape or attempted rape. Answers for the initial year were optional, as is common with new reporting requirements, and the DOE declined to make the results public. But in any case, those figures would be hopelessly incomplete because of the widespread school closures that were part of the COVID response. Even with the new questions, Miller wondered how clear the picture provided might be, because for now, OCR is asking only about incidents that occurred on school grounds. That means incidents that happen in a car or in an apartment or anywhere off campus would not be included, and that's where the majority of these attacks happen, she said. Oh, yeah, well, that's true.
Yep.
Because a lot of the stories we cover where women are banging their students, they're not doing it in class.
No,
they're
not
doing
it in the school, because the schools have cameras and other people
they're
around.
meeting them. They're meeting with them, like, and they're going to, he goes to the teacher's house or she goes to his place. Usually he goes to her place.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
they get together in a car.
Yeah, exactly. The same problem had confronted one of DeVos's top lieutenants, Kimberly Ritchie, when she served as chief counsel to the school system in Oklahoma. Even in a deeply conservative state, Ritchie found few supporters. When surprised by how many complaints were reaching her desk, she approached lawmakers in Norman about changes. I met with resistance from the very beginning, she said, and I had complaints 95% of the time coming from parents about a school or a teacher. And when I contacted them, the teacher would immediately resign, travel 5 miles to the next district, and start working there. Whoa.
Yeah.
Several people who spoke with RCI said teachers' unions contracts were a major obstacle to both moving forward with credible allegations of sexual misconduct and blocking future school employment for alleged perpetrators. Neither the American Federation of Teachers nor the National Education Association responded to questions from RCI about this topic. Teachers aren't the only obstacles to reform. Superintendent of Public Education in Oklahoma from 2011 to 2015, Janet Baresi, said state groups lobbying on behalf of school administrators and board members were much more vociferous opponents than teachers' unions of laws that would force schools to disclose information about prior allegations and cases involving school employees. So state groups and lobbyists, lobbying on behalf of school administrators and board members. So the school board was an obstacle then, in at least in this example.
Well, look at what happened. Look at what happened in Virginia when that guy was arrested at the school board meeting.
Right? Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah,
because his
daughter was like, in a changing room or a bathroom.
It was in a bathroom, and she was orally raped by a male student in a dress, and they just quietly moved the male student to a different school, transferred him, and that was that, and just didn't take any further action. And it's like, oh, well, that's great. Like, I'm sure he's going to find another girl he likes at his new school.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I'm just, you look at it, and it's like they don't want to deal with it. And then the dad gets mad and starts yelling. And then they arrest him for, I don't know. Well, they went to arrest him. They grabbed him, and then he resisted because he didn't even know who was grabbing him from behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they're like, "Oh, you were resisting arrest," and it's like,
yeah.
And now he's on some fucking terrorist watch list with you and me, Brian.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that we all are. Actually, you guys watching at home are also on a watch list, I'm sure. Just because we're talking about, boys being raped in school.
You're getting an extra pat down by TSA.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't vacation in Europe anytime soon either.
I want a female to do the search, if that's okay. Okay, so anyway, let me see. If the system would be more open and honest about all this, then parents would feel more relieved, and it would get rid of a great deal of rumor and conjecture, Baresi said. It is those employee projections that produce a pattern known as passing the trash, several experts told RCI. This is particularly relevant in cases where state or local law enforcement agencies are never notified of allegations. A school may launch an investigation after a parent or student files a complaint, but the investigation would cease when the employee resigned, and then state law or bargaining agreements often prohibit officials and administrators from relaying such information to any new school where the alleged perpetrator applied or began working. Did you want to say something about that? You're shaking your head over there.
Well, it's like that Nova Scotia nursing home nurse. You just can't relay the information to any future employers, and so it's like, good luck with that. You haven't been warned.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Because I mean, they're basically guaranteed work. Like,
if you're in a union, yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I was working at a grocery store and I was caught drinking beers that I had stolen in the back, and they fired me, and I go to another grocery store, would it be messed up if the previous store could not say, when they call and they say, I can tell them, well, I just quit. It was a really toxic work environment, and then they can't go to my previous employer and ask them, why is he no longer with you guys? And they have to say, well, we can't say, but it was, I guess, like totally amicable. He wasn't in the back drinking our beers and not paying for them.
They can't even hint at what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, no, this is like, it's unsustainable. This is why unions really bother me, and they have for a long time. And it's this, because they protect cheaters and free riders.
Yeah, right? They protect the least deserving people.
Yes, and then like, if you're somebody who's like who's actually got a legitimate grievance, often you find yourself twisting in the wind, right? And it's just like, it is kind of capricious and arbitrary, but it's all part of the contract, and so it's infuriating, and but at the same time, I am not trying to convince my husband to leave the union yet. We'll wait and see. December 2026, when our mortgage comes up for renewal.
Miller said Sesame has model legislation states. Miller said Sesame has model legislation states could pass to confront the problem, but thus far the group has found limited success. Yeah, well-meaning groups can't really get their leg in their foot in the door on that. The Enough Abuse campaign, which did not respond to RCI's questions, notes that age of consent laws and the definitions of what constitutes sexual misconduct have created a complicated legal and regulatory map. Still, the campaign seems more optimistic about legislative process than Sesame, declaring that, quote, over 75% of states have now passed legislation specifically outlawing educators' sexual misconduct, end quote, in recognition of the power imbalance that exists in a teacher-student relationship. Okay. I have the link here. It is it's a bit complicated, but I'll just go back to the article. Maybe we can look at that another time.
Yeah, but basically what they're saying is, if you're in a position of authority over someone, basically, if you can say, well, if you have sex with me, I'll give you an A, and if you don't have sex with me, I'll give you an F. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's coercion. That's exploitation, right? So, and it's the same, like they have laws here in Canada, right? Because for the longest time, the age of consent in Canada was 14, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Age of consent was 14 to have sex with an adult, and they raised it to 16 sometime after I was 14. But there are exceptions, and those exceptions are if you are in a position of trust or authority over that person, right? Like, you have to be at least 16 years old in Canada to sleep with an adult, and you can't sleep with your teacher. It's not That's
Right.
statutory rape, right?
Yeah.
So, but
Okay, so let me see. Where was I? And there are some signs lawmakers are grasping the enormity of the issue. With regards to the previous paragraph. On July 1st, an Oklahoma law went into effect mandating any verbal or social media contact between school employees and students be done on platforms the school controls, which State Representative Sherry Conley called a, quote, long overdue, end quote, regulation.
that should just be a given, right? And
Yeah.
it doesn't even interrupt students from trolling their teachers, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, like a in school like portal that has emails and where you can look up your assignments and things like that and
Yeah,
ask
no,
questions of the teacher. Yeah.
and you have access to your teacher's email. Like Sam, my youngest, Mr. Williams and him had a special relationship. And that
Whoa.
relationship was Sam would sign him up for flyers, sign his email up for every flyer he could find online, and then also send him dank memes.
Oh.
And he'd spend all day doing this until one day, Sam was in computer science and sending some memes and some flyer subscriptions, and then Mr. Williams, his social studies teacher, left his class, and came down and stuck his head in the door and said, "Sam, I'm going to need you to stop doing that." So, but it was all on the school's freaking email list, right? Like it's not like he had Mr. Williams's personal cell phone number or anything. Like, no, there's no reason to be on your teacher's personal email account or personal cell phone number or anything like that, right? Like, there's absolutely no reason for that other than setting up freaking dates, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's a fair exchange. Memes, they have a rising market value. They're like the NFTs, I think.
Well, these were all Minion memes from.
Oh, Minion memes are kind of low. They're kind of like, I think they're on the lower end. I don't know. We'll have to check the stonk market for that. But I don't think the Minion memes are worth as much. Are they?
I don't. I have no idea the currency of memes and what the going rate is. I just know that Sam, he was just like, Mr. Williams. He's like, I think he'd appreciate Minion memes, and I don't know. So he just like bombarded the guy's email, like probably 30 emails a day, between the signing up for flyers and the you've signed up for the Walmart flyer, you've signed up for this flyer, you've signed up for that flyer, right? And then the memes. So
okay.
yeah.
Well, I don't know. That's like boomer shit. Like I think Minions, Betty Boop, Disney princesses, and those are all boomery memes. Those are like ancient, like for wine moms. You know, do you remember the old MySpace? And people would put up like an image of Betty Boop, and there'd be like these like sparkly glitter pattern that would move throughout the image. That's where the Minions are at. That's like that level, in my opinion.
Well, I don't remember MySpace, because by the time this boomer got on the internet, MySpace was done. It was gone. It wasn't a thing.
I don't think you're a boomer, Karen. I think you're an Xer like me.
Well, yes, I'm an Xer, but I wasn't even on the internet until 2006.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I got on the internet in the late 90s. And I was also late to the internet as well. So
how boomer am I? 2006.
Pretty boomer. That's pretty boomer. Yeah.
Super boomer.
Although
Even my mom is not such a big boomer. She's like 82 and she was on the internet before I was.
My mother is a boomer. She used the internet for only like two things because she's terrified of going to any websites because she's sure she's gonna get viruses and her identity
Malware,
stolen.
yeah.
And yeah, so she doesn't go anywhere. She won't do anything without my nephew's supervision. Like he's gonna go to the websites for her so that she can upload photos she took.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I know.
That's hilarious. Even my mom's not like that. No, she's like she has like multiple email accounts and she's got like a smart TV and an Alexa, and she's all like wired into everything. She might as well get a Neuralink. Probably help
She
her.
might as well. Yeah. I understand it's going to be doing everything. So anyway, let me get through the rest of this.
Okay.
So similarly, in Michigan, State Representative Brad Paquette, himself a teacher, has proposed legislation appointing a state ombudsman to deal with sexual misconduct complaints. It's just a beginning, but we have to start somewhere, Paquette told RCI. I first heard back in 2012 or 2013 when I started teaching that I had to join the union because I might have an accusation filed against me. But I thought, no, I should be fired if I did something wrong, end quote. I think we need to be engaged. I don't believe the unions would stick up for a male teacher that was accused
No,
of
they will.
something. But do you think so?
They will.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess they have to, but
Yeah.
I think we need to be engaged aggressively to root out the problem, he said. There's no good reason for us to take a lax approach. You see these headlines all over the place, and it's unacceptable. People need to start asking questions. While Ritchie said she did not recall any credible allegations crossing her desk during a brief stint as an attorney with Virginia schools, Paquette's everywhere assessment seems to be on the mark. In Texas, for example, the online site Texas Scorecard started looking at the issue in 2022 after administrators in Prosper, a swanky Dallas suburb, attempted to cover up alleged repeated sexual offenses by a school bus driver. Since then, Texas, what's going on over there? Texas Scorecard has kept an unofficial tally of such incidents, and the Lone Star State has had more than 100 cases every year since. Let me see. I think they're just giving more examples. I kind of want to skip ahead of that.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find one other, maybe we'll get to like a kind of a sum up in here. So last year, the Defense of Freedom Institute released a report titled Catching the Trash that concluded sexual misconduct by school employees has raged in the school system for decades. Various actors, school and district personnel, teachers' unions, and the federal department charged with enforcing laws against sexual assault in public schools bear responsibility for a systemic failure in preventing and responding to sexual assaults in public schools, the report says. Pointing to the Biden administration's attempt to remove specific questions about the issue from the OCR questionnaire, report author Paul Zimmerman told RCI the public should not expect much daylight on the topic in the near future. The Biden administration has gone dark on this. They're not interested in pressing this issue, as evidenced by trying to discontinue the efforts made on this front by the previous administration, he said. These political bumps and the wreckage the COVID shutdowns unleashed on education in America. I wonder, though, if kids weren't safer when they were at home. Like, I know they keep saying that it was really bad, but considering what's going on in schools, I don't know. Means there is no way of tackling the problem's dimensions, let alone the problem itself. It takes so long to get these numbers that in the end, they're not that helpful, he said. The best way to block the passage of trash is through the Sesame Act, which DOE, Department of Education, has cited as model legislation for states. To date, only a handful of states have passed it. Most recently, Illinois in 2023, well, that's kind of promising. It requires the prohibition of non-disclosure agreements in personal or collectively bargained contracts, as deep background checks on all applicants.
I would give up the latter and just stick with the former. prohibiting non-disclosure agreements, that would, I mean, okay, well, what was, okay, Harvey Weinstein, okay, what was his paper trail? A bunch of sealed files, sealed by non-disclosure agreements. He paid women to be quiet, and like, there's nothing illegal about a non-disclosure agreement unless it's covering up a crime, right? Okay, then it's bribing a witness. Okay. But as long as the witness says there is no crime and agrees there is no crime, then not talking about it is perfectly legal to purchase, right? And so, I mean, like, it's a very murky freaking area. But if you've been accused, right, of something, I would say, just get rid of the non-disclosure agreements, but do it in tandem with introducing actual due process. Okay? How about that? Right? So that it's not, like, it's the passing the trash, right? We're just passing it on to the next school, right? Well, instead of doing that, why don't you actually do your due diligence, find out if the guy actually or the woman actually did it, right? And then report it to police if you find that there's actual something there, right? And then the police can take care of it. And then it's no longer your problem, and you've done your job as an administrator of a school, right? This has always bothered me about the universities in particular, their approach to sexual assault claims on campus, right? Is the fact that they take it into these kangaroo courts that are fair to no one, right? And then there's no due process at all. It's just absolutely retarded, right? No.
Well, they don't allow, they often just want to get it over with as fast as possible, right? They don't want to, they don't allow any evidence on the defense's side, like a lot of times, because they want to streamline it.
Yeah, no, and it's like, if there's probable cause, report it to the fucking police. Right? Report it to the police, and then they will do an investigation. They have investigatory tools that you don't, right? They have subpoena power. You don't, right? They can go and look at phone records. You can't. Okay? Right? They have all of the tools. That's their job, is investigating crimes for which there is probable cause. So if you think to yourself, well, I'm confronted with this situation and I believe there's probable cause, yeah, it's not up to you to adjudicate that now. I mean, maybe you take some intermediary action, like, okay, well, you guys can't attend the same classes, right? Or he can't live in the same dorm building as you. We're going to have to shuffle him into another dorm building, right? Something like that, right? Just to be on the safe side, right? But you can't like freaking decide, well, we're going to adjudicate this. We're going to perform the surgery with this half full coffee mug and a bottle of Advil. Right? And it's all going to turn out just fine, right? Because that's the tools you have, right? As a school administrator, those are the tools. You don't have subpoena power. You can't freaking call witnesses. You can't make anybody take a DNA test. You can't freaking do shit. Refer it to the fucking police. That's their job.
Yep. That's what they are there for.
Yeah, and I bet you if every fucking rape accusation on campus that involved anything like probable cause, okay, was automatically referred to the fucking police, there'd be fewer false allegations.
There'd be fewer allegations.
Because
there would.
yeah,
Because like most false allegations are very infrequently proven false. They just don't go anywhere. You know, like a not guilty verdict is not the same as a she lied verdict. Yeah.
But you look at it and it's like, yeah, no, if every freaking alleged purported victim had to go the whole 9 yards through the justice system, right? You know, I'm sorry, but there are only so many Nancy or Lucy Ducouters out there who are willing to take it all the way to perjuring themselves on the stand, right? And then having Marie Henin like slap a file full of evidence proving that they were lying the entire time they were giving testimony. Right? Sorry, Gian Gomeshi reference. But
yeah. I remember the good old days.
And so like there are only so many women that crazy to take a false allegation that far, right? And I'm sorry, but like universities do not have, and schools do not have the tools to actually adjudicate these things. And like sweeping it under the rug or under the union contract is not acceptable. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable when it happens to a female student. It's not acceptable when it happens to a male student. It's not acceptable no matter the sex of the teacher or their sexual orientation or their gender identity. It's not acceptable across the fucking board. Right? And no, like, why are schools doing this? Why are they taking this on? Why are they taking this on as their responsibility? Why are they being like, oh, well, you know, we know she really raped that kid, but we can't, we signed a non-disclosure agreement. So we just can't say, we just can't warn anybody else. Like, what the fuck is that?
I don't know. I think
I'm sorry. A non-disclosure agreement, as far as I'm concerned, right? A non-disclosure agreement pertaining to legal acts, like Trump had sex with a porn star, and then he paid her to not talk about it. She didn't accuse him of a crime. She didn't accuse him of rape. She didn't accuse him of anything, right? It was just like, oh, yeah, maybe they banged once. And he's like, you know, I don't want you to talk about this. Well, that's fine. That's about privacy, right? But non-disclosure agreements to cover up a crime? That's a non-disclosure agreement to cover up a crime. That should be illegal. That I actually technically think it is illegal.
Yep, I think so. All right, well, so we're almost done here, but good points raised. So only such thorough steps will break what Amos Guiora, a law professor at the University of Utah, who has worked with Miller and Sesame, calls, quote, the complicity of silence, end quote. While the parameters of the problem may be hard to find, Guiora said he was stunned when he recently published what he acknowledged is a niche book on a West Virginia teacher exposed years late as a pedophile murderer. The limited book sold out on Amazon, and his podcast has now topped 1 million views. That tells you that what's happening is something that is touching a chord, he said. It's so goddamn egregious what they have done to protect people who do this. Lawmakers will have to break the institutional complicity that surrounds this, or they'll just be protecting the perpetrators, which is kind of like what they're doing now. And also, this comes from real clear investigations. I'm pretty sure
they're a good site.
Yeah, they are. They've done a lot of good work. They're kind of like Project Veritas and O'Keefe Media Group, right? They like go into places
they were the first to to disclose what's his name, Eric Charamella's name, right? The Ukraine's quote whistleblower.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, and they were also the people who identified Igor Danchenko, who was the guy who provided almost all the information that was published that Christopher Steele put in the Steele dossier, right? And he'd been under FBI investigation as a possible Russian spy between 2010 and 2012, I believe. So, yeah, no, like he was a suspected Russian spy, and his name's all over that dossier, and the FBI just kept still using it to re-up their warrants to spy on Trump.
Yeah, pretty based, and I don't know. What do you? Real quick before we end the show, were there any revelations made in this piece,
No.
or did you kind of like suspect all this stuff already?
Oh yeah, no, all of this is like, I mean, like I wasn't aware of the fact that they don't collect detailed information. I forget who they named the law after, but it is a federal law that educational institutions have to report sexual assaults that are reported to them. They have to report them to the Department of Education, and it's like Caitlin's law or some shit. But yeah, no, I had no idea that they didn't have to disclose any of the details, like was this a teacher or a student or a staff member or an administrator, or was this like a black person or a white person? Like, you know, like they literally collect this data in the FBI collects this data for the Uniform Crime Reporting system. Whenever it's available, right? You know, like maybe you don't know that you were robbed by a black guy because he was wearing a balaclava or something, right? But if that information is available, that gets reported. And I had no idea that the DOE's UCR version of UCR was not collecting any of the relevant data, you know, even on sex of the perpetrator and things like that, sex of the victim. So it's just like, oh, you just have to like give them your raw number of sexual assault complaints and that's it, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not helpful.
No. No. Well, I thought this was pretty interesting. I hope that you guys found it interesting. Let us know what you guys think about this in the comments. What do you think about, well, I mean, I think it's obvious, like getting rid of NDAs and this kind of, there's something up with the unions. Like, I think that there's too much desire for people to cover their own ass and stay out of trouble than do the right thing. And I think that's one of the problems. And also the way that we perceive sexual assault of minors. We just look at it different, and it's a mental block that we have to get past. So let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I'm going to end it there. If you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. And there's a link to the full article in the description. You can read it yourself. I read through like 95% of it. But like I just sort of glossed over some because it was just like an excess of examples and anecdotes that we didn't really need. We were getting the gist of it, and I know for some people you just need more to drive it home, but yeah, check it out yourself if you like. Remember, our monthly fundraiser is still going on. We still got like about 6 days, I think, or a few days left in it. So if you want to help us out, go to feedthebadger.com/support and give us a little bit of support so that we can continue to bring you this content. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of the Rantzerker, and we'll talk to you all in the next one. Have a good one, everybody.
Are machines, dude. Okay, they are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.